Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Stages podcast. This episode, I really want to just talk about just your ability to take a vacation. So I kind of want to break it down. Vacation can kind of fall into a lot of different terms for everybody, like a lot of different meanings. Like, am I going to the Bahamas? Am I going to Mexico? Am I going to the mountains? Different things like this. So I figured I would limit it to one thing at a time, and maybe I'll revisit it and talk about some other things as well. But I'm going to go ahead and just limit this to camping in the woods or going camping with your family up in the mountains, like a couple days or so. So that's what we're going to limit our discussion to now. And so without, taking up too much time, I just want to cover just a few things. I think the first one is just why you should. Okay, so why you should take a family vacation and go camping. Okay, so one of the biggest things that can happen when you're fighting cancer is that symptoms, from your treatment can prove to be kind of gnarly. So I know that when I was having chemo, I had it every other week, and so that kind of took the weeks of treatment kind of off the table. One, because I had to go in for a long infusion session, but then also I had to have the pump on for another 2 days and wouldn't get it off until that Friday. So if I went in on a Wednesday, I wouldn't get it off till Friday. And so I think, obviously that's kind of a wash. You don't want to try to go camping with the pump and then, they can train you to know how to remove your own pump. But it's not, it's not fun. So it's just better if you kind of leave those weeks alone. And you should schedule out in advance, so you should know when those weeks are going to happen. And I would just say that if you're kind of in a stage 3 or stage 4 cancer, the idea of pushing a date isn't really a good idea. I think, I've experienced that just recently. I took some time off. I had 27 straight rounds of chemo, and then I had surgery. And during surgery, I had to take extra weeks off, then have the surgery, then have recovery. Then I had an ostomy, then I had a reversal of the ostomy, then I had recovery from that surgery. And so I went, with some time off of chemo. And then what happened was, while I took that time off, even though we were getting cancer and it was a necessary surgery, cancer came back, right? Because at stage 4, it's in your bloodstream and it can go to different organs in your body. And so that's what happened. So I ended up with cancer in more places than I started out with in my original diagnosis, even though that was stage 4. So I would just caution you that you can consult with your doctor. I'm certainly not giving you medical advice, but I would just say, be mindful of the impact of taking time off from chemo and kind of try to schedule your time to do like a camping trip or something on your off week, right? If you're doing kind of every other week. I'm no longer doing chemo. I'm on what's called a Phesgo injection. And so Phesgo, we've talked about before. I'll let you look at those blog posts or listen to those podcasts. But Phesgo, real short, is every 3 weeks. And so it gives me an extra week in there. And so it's a little bit easier for me to schedule, but it also had its own side effects. And so, yeah, so I want to talk about why you should do it. And so I think one of the things that we've tried to push on stages and why we're talking about treatment and off weeks and things like that is that stages never wants to encourage you to allow cancer to kind of control your life, right? We don't want it to be the subject of every little thing that you talk about. We certainly, we don't want you to get into a rut where like it starts to creep into all areas of your family and all areas of, where you're um, just it just kind of, you just kind of pull everybody into your disease, right? What we're trying to advocate for at Stages is that you take control, you take leadership, and sometimes that requires, sucking it up, cowboying up, so to speak. And I think camping is one of those things, right? So it is a really enjoyable experience that your family will remember, especially, we all have to face the reality that we may not have as long as other people here. We don't know how cancer is going to go. And so I think when you take that into account, like, you have to ask yourself, what are the last memories that you want your family to have of you? And if you have the ability to do it, yeah, it's going to require you sucking it up. It's going to require you um, being able to try to muster the strength and energy to do it. And so obviously, if your doctor is saying no, obviously if you're like absolutely weak and have to be in bed, I mean, those are other things. But if you feel like, I can have a pretty normal week, especially on an off week, but there are symptoms and they suck, right? And so, for me with Fesgo, I do have symptoms, and some of them are a little bit painful, some of them are annoying, and different things like that. And so if I'm going to make a decision to go camping, then I have to understand that those things are coming with me. Those symptoms aren't, coming with me. So the question is there anything that you could do to limit, the effects of that? Like, if one of the side effects is loose stool or diarrhea or something like that you have, and so you're concerned, hey, I'm going to be camping, they're going to have camp bathrooms and camp things like that, can I still do it? And yeah, I mean, like, can you hit Imodium, if you're in pain and you feel, is there an anti-inflammatory, is there something that you can take that, at least minimizes your discomfort? um, because the goal is, right, that you don't just go, but you're suffering and you're kind of laid up wherever you're camping. The goal is that you can be an active participant and enjoy. Sure, there's going to be moments where you're pushing through things, and maybe you're sitting in a camp chair by the fire instead of taking that extra hike or extra. That's fine. Like, you have to kind of understand your body and what your limits are and what you can handle. But I would just encourage you that, it's real easy for a cancer fighter to start to just kind of shut themselves in. Well, home is convenient, home is comfortable. Being in home, I control most of the variables. And being out somewhere camping on a campground is public, it's more public, it's less private, it's got all these challenges. And so it's just easier for me just to stay at home. And sure, you're right, it is easier for you to stay at home. But I think, you're going to rob yourself of making memories and doing things with your kids that you might, not get to have, right? I mean, your condition could get worse. And so you have to be mindful of, while you have strength today, while you can do it, can you do it? So that my first answer to the question, like, can I do it? Can I go camping as a cancer fighter? And the simple answer is yes. Obviously, there's variables and different things that you may be facing in your journey that I am not facing in mine. And so there might be some health concerns and different things like that that might make that answer a no. But I think if you can, you're kind of in that general fight, and chemo's not fun and the side effects aren't fun. But I can get through it. Like, I can go to work, I can do things, so I can definitely suck it up and do it. I would encourage you then to do it. So then the question is, like, how? Okay, so I'm going to use myself as an example, and kind of my journey is I'm having the Fesgo treatment. So the first thing I had to do is kind of, plan the timing. And so I had to work around kind of my off weeks. I didn't want to do necessarily a treatment week. Although with Fesgo, it is a little bit easier to handle those things. And so you're looking for that space. And then once you've kind of determined a good time and you've gotten, the vacation logged with your workplace and different things like that, and you want to start thinking through plans. And some of us, maybe you've got a fifth wheel trailer, a pop-up trailer or something that makes things easier. That's great. For me, in my experience, we all we have are tents, right? So we had a couple tents, and so we had to kind of make our decisions based on that. And since that's probably one of the most challenging things to do, you're not glamping at that point. You're not in a trailer that might have air conditioning and cable TV and everything else, but you're really roughing it. So that's kind of the experience I'm going to describe. So the first thing, obviously, you pick the date, you pick the time, but I think the biggest thing that you have to think through are your symptoms. Like, what is it that you're definitely going to want to have, right? And I think the first thing is just, proximity to a restroom. It's, we enjoy here in Colorado what we call dispersed camping, where you can kind of find a site that's kind of a ways down off a beaten path. You don't have a bunch of other campers right next to you. You have a camping space, but it's kind of secluded, it's private. And so we like that. And so, I think sometimes that might be an advantage, but you also have to take into consideration, like, am I close to the camp restroom? Is that going to be a problem if I'm not? How far away is it, right? And those type of things. And so, you've really got to kind of plan that out, look at the maps, and kind of, make sure that you take that into account. I think the other thing is you have to consider your comfort and what you can endure, right? So for me, I think if I had an air mattress that I could inflate and put in the tent, that made things a lot easier for me to get up, to get around, to sleep, to be able to sleep at night. And so, that was one of the things that we did. So if you're going to do something like that, you have to have, for us, we had to either have a battery powered inflator, or you have to kind of, at least be able to ask permission from, usually they have a year round, or at least a summer seasonal person that's running the campground, and they have access to electric, and you might just say, hey, could I plug in and fill up a couple air mattresses real quick, which is what we did. We used the kind of the camp caretakers electric for just a few moments, and we're able to fill up all our air mattresses, and then we could bring them to our tents. So you just have to take that into consideration, or get yourself one of those battery powered pumps and different things like that. But then I think, you just want to make sure that you have, for me, a comfortable camp chair, those type of things, making sure that you are going to be warm at night. If you have a tendency to get cold, I have a tendency to be like really temperature sensitive. Unfortunately for me, one of my side effects is just sometimes I get really hot, and then other times I'm freezing to death. And so it's always hard to kind of know which one that's going to be, and what triggers each of those things is still, I just don't know. So I have to kind of be prepared with layers, and if I get hot, then I can, take some layers off. But if it's cold and it's at night and I'm freezing, and that's going to keep me from sleeping, you want to make sure you have a great sleeping bag. And I say that because it had been 90 something degrees for the last several weeks when we decided to go camping. And then when we got there, it was raining, and the temperature was in the low 40s. And I have like this little tiny, it's almost like a wool felt thin blanket that I thought, well, that's all I'll need because it's been so hot here in Colorado. Well, yeah, it wasn't. And so I didn't sleep while I was freezing to death. I was just really, really cold. So yeah, not a good move by me. So, learn from my mistake and make sure that you are taking that into account. I think the other thing is just make sure that you take, a checklist. Do you have your meds? Do you have any of those things that I mentioned that kind of maybe, prevent some of the side effects from happening, or at least control them or minimize them? Then you want to make sure those are there. But then I think it's the trip. Like, what do you plan on doing, right? The tent is where you're going to sleep. The campsite is maybe where you're going to cook your meals and stuff. But are you going to do day trips? Are you going to go on hikes? Are you going to do those things? And so I think those are things that you have to do no matter what, right? When you're camping, whether you have cancer or not, you got to make sure that you have enough water bottles. You got to make sure are looking at the difficulty of the terrain. For us in Colorado, when you're up in the mountains, you can have huge steep grades where it's a short, maybe it only is 1.5 miles, to 2 mile loop. And so the hike looks easy, but then you realize the incline as you go up about 3,000 to 4,000 feet in elevation on that height. Well, that could be extremely challenging. And, while you might be able to pull it off, is that going to just, crush the rest of your day? You're going to do it, then you're going to be fatigued all day. And so I think you really got to do a lot of extra planning, where maybe if you want a camping trip, you're like, look at there's a bunch of trails and there's a bunch of things. We'll just figure it out when we get there and decide which one we want to do. I really think, do your due diligence to kind of think about your energy levels and, your challenges, and, what you're physically going to be capable of doing. And so that's some more research that you want to do. But I mean, the internet is a great place. People rank trails. You can search the trail and you can see, people will talk about how difficult it is. They'll talk about the beauty of it. They'll show you photos and everything. So there's just so much information online from people who've been there before, that can describe the trail and the hiking and the difficulty and different things like that. And then a lot of the trails have their own system of ranking, how hard it's going to be, how much elevation you're going to climb, and those things. So you just want to be mindful of those things. Then I think is making sure that, as you're thinking through what you can do, you got to think through, like, what does my family enjoy? Like, how many, with me, my daughters are grown up. My youngest is 18. My other daughters are all out of the house and living on their own. So when we all got together, there was a lot of, kind of, hey, we want to make this a relaxing kind of trip. We're all working, we're all, so we're not we're not looking to, go scale, a bunch of 14ers and everything like that. We're, but we want to see nature. We want to get out by the river and water. We like, and if we can see, get out there and kind of hike and see some beauty, it's great. So you have to plan accordingly. And I will just say that, if you're doing like a 2 to 3 day trip, those days go by fast. So the idea of winging it and just figuring out when you get there, you can just burn 2, 3, 4 hours just trying to figure that out, right? And then all of a sudden it's lunchtime, and then you lost another hour to eat because you haven't been decisive. So I would really encourage you to do extra planning on the front end to make sure that the camping trip, is everything that you want it to be, and everything, and safe, for you. And then I think, just kind of have a rule of thumb. Like, I think, sitting down with your family before, either before you go on the trip or maybe on the drive to the trip, at least some sort of powwow session, at the very beginning or prior to the trip happening, and just saying, listen, I'm going to be fine. I'm going to power through this, and you may see me and it might look like I'm struggling, or I might be a little quiet. So I just want to make sure that um, that that's okay. That's a decision that I've made. And I think it's important to tell them, because what you want them to do is not be asking you every 5 minutes if you're okay. You're going to have to, just clear that with them and in your family members, so that they can enjoy themselves. Like, hey, just be at peace. Like, don't worry about it. Whatever I'm going through, I've already calculated and I understand. But you don't need to keep asking me. You don't need to be on pins and needles. You don't need to be worried about my health. And if something happens or there's something unexpected, then I will be sure to tell you. But other than that, just relax. Don't worry about me. And I think it's really important, to have that discussion, with your family on the the outset of going on a camping trip, because and really any vacation, because the last thing you want is just to let the disease kind of take over even your vacation. Just I would say, hey, we're not going to talk about symptoms, surgeries, cancer, any of those things. Those things are going to be, done. If you're, like me and my wife, I think you might want to set some boundaries around work. So I'm not going to discuss work. I'm not going to discuss frustrations about work. I'm not going to, and you gotta kind of weigh that, so, with us, we had, some daughters who were coming in from out of state that we hadn't seen in a while. And there may be some general interest in like, hey, how are things going? And so weigh it and see, a little bit of talk about just saying like work is doing fine and everything like that. But again, you just don't want to let something creep into your vacation and rob you, of having fun and enjoying it. Be in the moment, be in the space. And otherwise I think you just lose nature, and you lose the whole point of why you're up there, to begin with. I mean, like, enjoy that beauty, right? There could be some time where your health slips and you're struggling and you aren't able to do this, and you're going to miss those experiences, those mountaintop, experiences where you're having, crappy camp coffee, by a running river with trout in it, and your family around you, and s'mores and all kinds of stuff. And so just soak in, like, there's so much there in the mountains and in the woods and on a camping trip to have you in the moment. Don't bring all that stuff with you. So I would just, have that discussion ahead of time and be agreed upon that that's the case, right? And I think that's, um, gonna be the key to having a really fun time. And then I think packing in, meaning making sure that, the everything, you don't want to, you give yourself some freedom, give yourself some free time, give yourself some things where you don't, I'm not saying you have to have every minute planned, but like, make sure that the goal of your, adventure is met. Kind of discuss that as a family. Go through like, hey, we're just gonna sit, our goal is just to relax, chill out, defrag from everything. This is vacation after all. And so there's some really cool places that we want to go see, and so we're going to do this day trip, or we're going to go over here and we're going to see this, and we're going to go to that lake, and we're going to see that, we're going to go to this small town. For us, we had heard a lot about a town called Ouray in Colorado, and so we knew that, like, on the first leg of the trip, before, the rest of our group could even make it, that we could, get to Ouray, see it a little bit, scout it out for maybe a future trip, and spend, an afternoon or morning, or, eat a meal there, kind of get a lay of the land, and then think about, plans to come back when we have more time. So we were able to kind of schedule that little kind of day trip excursion, into our schedule. And so those are the things that you want to, plan on, and look at those times, and always give yourself, an understanding of, like, for us in Colorado, I mean, it could be 5, 6, 7 hours of a drive getting from, places like Colorado Springs and Denver all the way up, to Ouray, which is on the western side of the state. So you got to really plan and think through those things. But then, I think just being able to just, as a cancer fighter, your ability to really dig deep, and really power through is so important. Give your family a win, give your family a break, give your family a chance to take deep breaths and breathe in and escape from the appointments and from, the specter of your disease and everything that fighting cancer requires of you. And so I think just, it's kind of like getting your mindset up. I'm sure that people who serve in the military face this, getting ready for deployment, I think. But also, I think anyone that has difficult physical challenges, chronic pain, different things like that, that you experience, that, just being able to dig deep and prepare your mindset. I mean, it wasn't going to be easy for me to go camping. It was going to be hard. Some of the side effects that I face are difficult, especially camping makes them worse. And so just being able to dig deep and knowing like, hey, I've got, 48 hours, 72 hours to endure this, and I'm going to be fine, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to get through it. And I think those things are just, um, they're worth it, right? They're worth it to dig deep and power through. And so I think that's the kind of thing that you have kind of got to psych yourself up that, a few days before, is that like, hey, and don't sit around expecting the worst. Hopefully things that, you've done good job at planning and mitigating your symptoms and different things like that. But I just think it's really important for you to have the mindset that, hey, this is for my family, and this is for me too. This is a memory that we get to make, and really be intentional with it. So that's it, as far as like just talking about, is vacation possible when you have cancer? The answer is yes. At a later episode, I'll talk about air travel and, going to other locations. Obviously, if you do something like a hotel or an Airbnb or something like that, you might be able to lessen some of those things. Camping is hard. But for us, that just wasn't in our budget. And so that's probably another episode where we talk about, like being able to master your budget and what you can and cannot afford with medical bills and things like that. And so I think those are important discussions, and you have to take the cost of something into consideration. So for us, tent camping was the only option. It was the cheapest and most affordable, something like $16 to $20 per night for an entire campsite that we could pitch. If we had, 4 tents, we could have fit 4 tents there. So I think you just, you have to kind of know your budget. You got to know what you can save up, and you've got to, each person kind of do what they can do. So take that into account. But yeah, can you go camping and have cancer? Yes. Is it easy? No. But you can do it. So can you do it? Yes. How you do it, go through those planning steps that I talked about. Make sure that you're throwing a lot into the pre-camp planning, that are taking everything into consideration, right, that we discussed. And then, I think I want to return and just close with, should you do it? And to me, the answer is absolutely, you should do it. You should do it because of what it means for your family, what it will mean for you, and just take that into, really take that into account. It means so much to give your family a break, to spend some time, to make some memories. And so I would encourage you to bite the bullet, take it on, fight through it. And yeah, feel free to reach out to me, and I can kind of give you some tips and pointers of how I kind of mitigated some symptoms and different things like that. But I think it is well worth the investment, even if it's a sacrifice, even if it's really hard to do. Don't be stuck in your house all spring, all summer, all fall. because it's easy. Really give yourself some chance to make memories. All right. That's it for this episode, and look forward to talking to you more in the next.